evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the March 25th, 2024 Town Hall Charter Review Commission. We're happy to have you with us tonight. This is an opportunity for the citizens to give us their input into our charter. And at this time, we're going to call on Chief Driscoll. He will go over the procedures of tonight's town hall meeting and give a brief overview of what the Charter Commission is all about. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Every 10 years, the city establishes a Charter Review Commission, which is comprised of local citizens representing each zone of the city. The commission reviews our charter and then presents proposed amendments to the City Commission for their consideration. After the City Commission reviews the proposals, if they select any of the proposals, the amendments will be presented to our citizens at a vote during the November 2024 general election. Tonight, the Charter Review Commission would like to hear from you regarding any ideas you may have regarding amendments to the Charter. Several ideas have already been submitted, which are available to you here tonight on the board. More information about the Charter Review Commission is available on the city's website, or there's a QR code provided on tonight's flyer. Before we get started, we want to discuss what is our city's charter. The U.S. Constitution is a document in which our citizens delegate powers to the federal government. The city charter, which we're reviewing tonight, serves a similar purpose, but on a municipal level. In government, a charter is the foundational document which establishes the framework for how local government works in terms of structure, responsibilities, creation of departments, functions, services, and processes. As we review the charter this evening, you will learn more about this simple but very important document. Now that we know what a charter is, we should hear again what isn't a charter. The charter is not a document for changing zoning. It's not a document for requiring affordable housing, the building of parks, creation of higher paying jobs. The charter is not a place to solve local government issues or concerns. For best practices, and this is all provided from the National League of Cities, when considering an issue you feel that needs to be addressed, you should ask yourself the following. Can the issue be solved by passage of an ordinance? Can this issue be addressed with an administrative measure? Does the mayor, commission, or city manager already have the authority to solve this issue? And might state legislation address this issue more effectively than a change to the local charter? Again, the charter is like our Constitution. It's an important document which requires careful consideration before amending. Lastly, the process for tonight. This evening, again, we'll discuss all the articles of the charter. They're presented on the board to your left for your review. We ask that you keep your comments on topic and as brief as possible to convey your point so everyone has an opportunity to speak. You have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak, should you have any suggestions to speak to the charter board. Please silence your cell phones and limit side conversations so everybody may hear the item being discussed. And that's all for my report.
Great. Thank you very much, Chief. At this time, I'd like for the members of the team to introduce themselves. We're going to start with the representative representing Zone 1.
Oh, that would be me, Ann Ruby.
You want to tell them a little about yourself?
My name is Ann Ruby. I live in Zone 1 on the beach side. I've been a city activist for, 10 years. I think the charter it's important to pay attention to what goes on in this charter because we can affect some real changes in how our city commission functions and what goes on in the city.
Representative from Zone 2, Zimmerman.
Paul Zimmerman, lifelong resident of Daytona Beach, or the Daytona Beach area. Proud to be here. I want to thank City Commissioner Ken Strickland for appointing me to this board and look forward to working with the other members. Thanks.
Representative from Zone 3.
Hi, my name is Jack White. I am the stand-in for Chris Bowler. Chris Bowler is a great guy. I don't know his age, but he is the first candidate here. He's sick tonight, so I had to take his place. We were both looking forward to serving you all on this board. Thank you.
Great. Representative from Zone 4.
I'm Harry Lloyd. I've been a resident in Pelican Bay for about 20 years. I've been active in the Economic Development Advisory Board and with matters inside the community. And I find it a privilege to serve and assist the city in this event and this 10-year annual review. So thank you.
Right. Zone 5.
My microphone's giving me fits. This is Terry Malia. I'm from Zone 5, and I've been here since '75. So I feel very honored to be included in this group.
And the representative from Zone 6.
I'm Russ Weatherington, representative from Zone 6. Been here over 26 years, but I was born and raised in Florida, grew up in St. Augustine, so don't hold that against me.
Great. And I'm the mayor's representative. My name is Steve Miller. I was born and raised in beautiful Winter Haven, Florida. I've been a resident of Daytona Beach for approximately 40 years now, and we're so happy that you guys are here. And at this particular time, we want to hear from the citizens of the great city of Daytona Beach. And as you know, we have a 3-minute limit. And John?
Everything on it. All of your amendments are great. I would add one more, that it be citywide voting. 40 years ago, when they were talking about doing zone zoning, Kelly warned us that you would end up with commissioners with blinders and would only look for their zone and not look at the picture for the entire city. We ended up with 2 commissioners like that. So I'm asking you to consider the possibility of going to citywide. It's not that much more expensive, and it benefits us tremendously. Secondly, I just want to point out in the charter, the first one, it says the city commission shall, by ordinance, redesign and redesignate the boundaries for each zone after each annexation. I've been here, we've annexed 500-600 properties into the city, and not once did we even mention the idea of rezoning. And you all absolutely know what happened out west. So we need to rezone again. Thank you.
Right. Any other comments? Yes, please come up. Please introduce yourself and give us your address.
Jenny Nazak, 501 Harvey Avenue. Those all sound pretty good. I'm a little apprehensive about the idea of 2-year terms, only because I see people growing into their role, and it kind of takes a while, and I worry that it'll be kind of expensive and exhausting to be having elections every 2 years. It's kind of exhausting to be campaigned to, and if it's only every 4 years, you can deal, it's life. But every 2 years, I think it might get a little extreme. But then again, I have another somewhat extreme idea. What if instead of only running, what if it was almost like jury duty? What if different citizens got selected the way people get selected for jury duty, and then we'd all potentially have to / get to serve? Another possibility. Anyway, thank you all for this work and for allowing us to ask questions and make comments.
Right. Yes, sir.
Vern Weatherhost, 3 Granville Circle. I like some of the proposed amendments that's up on the board. I think that term limits should be a item that the city and the commission should look for. The 2-year term commissioners, I think that would be a good idea. It would be a lot of change, but it would give a lot of different people different ideas, because every day the city of Daytona Beach is growing. I've lived here over 12 years, and it has grown tremendously. We're annexing a lot of property. We've got a lot of changing. We're developing a lot of property. And I think the additional input of people that are interested in the city, they take the time to come to commission meetings, talk to their commissioners, and I think that would be a great idea. A lot of the comments up here, I agree. In the 2-year terms, one thing about it, you know, when somebody gets elected to the office, when they're campaigning, I know, I've run for commission, that they're really studying, you know, the charter, they're studying, you know, everything that they can to talk to the constituents out there. But then, you know, and I wasn't elected, by the way, but, you know, after they seem to settle in, you know, I talk to a lot of people in the city. And at different times, you know, you know, they say, well, you know, they complain about their commissioner and, you know, not knowing, hard to get a hold of, you know, the things are tremendous. And I hear it a lot from people. So I think that should be something considered in the charter review. I know we're supposed to have it every 10 years by law, but you can have a charter review every year if you want to, if the commission so deems it. And I think 10 years is too long for us growing city. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers who'd like to speak? Any other comments from our citizens? Please.
I'm Rodriguez, and I live in Daytona Beach. I agree with the 2-year term limits, or rather 2-year, because I've lived in several zones in the past 10 years. And the previous zone commissioner never came out, even though we requested it. I live in a zone now that the commissioner is very new, but she is so active, and you see her face everywhere. She's touchable. You call her, you text her, and she responds. The other one was been there year after year after year after year, and my sister lives in that other zone, and only now, election time is when that commission all of a sudden is seen. But the rest of the 3 years, they're not. And I agree, I think we said this before, and I agree with Ms. Ruby that, and I agree with the gentleman, if they're campaigning, they're already involved. They already know what the system is. They might not know what the physical government and City Hall does, and that's what the Citizens Academy is for. And so they should be required to go to that so they could see what all the departments do. But I really agree with the 2-year term, so the person could constantly be out there and not get, you know, after the 2 years, then all of a sudden you don't see them. I also agree with rezoning right after these annexations, because they just usually get annexed to the closest zone. And out west, we could see that it's not equal. All the zones are not equal, and the west is growing so big, so fast, that I think definitely rezoning is a priority, especially I didn't even know that it was there, but now that I know that after every annexation, or at least at some point, they should look into that.
Thank you. Anyone else with a comment for the commission? If there's no other comment, we can listen and hear from our awesome board. Ms. Ruby.
Well, thank you for coming out, and thank you for your comments. There are other things that we have talked about, and it might be, I don't know if the board has the appetite for this, but it might be interesting to kind of hear your thoughts on some of those things. like adding a section to the charter that requires that general public comment be within the meeting by charter, that there be public comment on first readings, that this is something we haven't talked about as a board, but that the city manager's evaluation schedule be addressed in the charter. So those are the kind of things that you may not have thought of, but I don't know if we want to hear from people if they're interested in speaking to those points. What?
You may. In fact, Mr. Brown is the alternative to the mayor's appointment. And you can introduce yourself and tell him your name too, Mr. Brown.
Short.
We can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Rick Brown, I'm in Zone 1 Beachside. I am the alternate with Steve Miller. So we've worked on this together. One other thing has come to my attention, especially in the recent meetings that we've dealt with, I'd like to see a time limit. Since there's a time limit on the citizens, I would like to see a time limit on the commissioners. We seem to have problems with some of the commissioners are doing a great job of staying in a decent timeline. Others are not, and this takes up citizens' time. There are also some commissioners that keep coming back and want to add, just one more thing, and they keep interrupting the flow of the discussion from the public. So I would like to see that they all take a turn, not multiple turns, and that they have a time limit. The reason why this is important, because I've seen some of our meetings go outrageously long. We've had some of our citizens who wanted to speak that just can't hang on for the lengthy remarks that go on and the banter back and forth. It would also put the commissioners on notice that they need to be prepared for their comments. It seems far too often we have paid commissioners and a paid mayor who seem to be very ad hoc on their remarks, and it's like they forget half their stuff. Perhaps they may need to have a prepared statement with notes and do it within a certain time limit, such as the citizens have to do within a 3-minute time limit. So I'd like to add that to the charter. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Vern, you can come back.
Make a comment. Ann brought up a lot of good points, especially on the reading of the ordinances in the city commission. You know, when they read it for the first time, there's no comments from the people, you know, in the audience. The few people that come most of the time. But if they could have a chance to talk about it and then, you know, hear comments from the commissioners, and if something changes in the meantime on the second reading, they could also have a change or a comment on that. The commission meetings, I think, are run fairly well. I mean, you know, the commissioners get up. I like to hear what they have to say. You know, we have an agenda. I think that the residents should be given time at the meeting sometime, not at the end. I can understand why it was changed years ago, but I think that we ought to bring it back. You know, and when you limit it to 3 minutes, say what you have to say, but in the beginning of the meeting, not at the end, where a commissioner's not required to stay, I might add. They can leave, but it's at the meeting is adjourned and then the comments are there. I think the comments should be into the meeting itself or in the minutes of itself. And things like that where the city, hopefully we could get more people into the commission meetings. If they have a problem and they can't get a hold of their commissioner, bring it to their individual commission. Bring it up to the whole commission at a time and maybe get something resolved through the whole commission. Thank you.
As an old guy, I remember a time when we used to have comments at first reading. And I know our current city attorney has a reason that we stopped doing that. However, as an old guy, I remember that first reading always had public comments, and there was a lot of discussion during first readings. I think that's a healthy way to do business. I think it gives the citizens an opportunity to witness the process and the decision-making that's going to affect them in their lives. I know many municipalities that have first readings, and for some reason, we stopped doing that here in Daytona. And I think it gives less voice to the people that the commission is supposed to represent. And I'm strongly in favor of having comments at first reading.
John, you have a comment?
John Nicholson, Beachside. Two things that Ann brought up. One, the county has the public speak just before the commissioners or the council members speak. I would actually go to that format to have the public. So if anything needs to be said from the commission, rather than argue back and forth, say it then. And then lastly, and I forgot I have a senior moment. Again, with regard to what Mr. Zimmerman said, to have it at first reading, because somebody could bring up something that's controversial or that's something that they did not think about, and you've got 2 weeks to solve it. They have 2 weeks to think about it. If you have it and they have 30 seconds before they vote, nobody can research in that time period. So I like both ideas. Thank you.
John, I have a question for you.
Yep.
Can the citizens speak on whatever they want to at the first beginning of the meeting?
At the county, yes,
Yes.
and both of them.
All right,
Yep.
thank you. Ms. Ruby?
I would just like to clarify on this handout, it says I proposed public comment at the beginning and at the end. In my ideal world, you would only get to speak once at general public comment. So that if you wanted to come early, so you could take the bus home or plead for money after a long day of work or whatever, you could do it at the beginning of the meeting and not have to sit through to the end. But if you wanted to sit through the meeting and then you had something to say, you could do it at the end. So it's a little, my comment on that sheet, I'm proposing beginning and at the end, but you only, each citizen could only speak in one of those instances. So, and I saw some nodding heads out there, but that's not going to get recorded in the meeting. Nobody's going to record nodding heads, so it might be good. It might be good if you have thoughts to get up and speak.
Mr. White? Jack?
Yeah, so I'm also an old guy, and I remember when we had 2-year term limits. So I'd be interested to know, get maybe some of the comments and feedback on why we switched, what were the issues that we had at the time, and how that got pushed to 4 years. It's nice to know what the history of it is before we go back to what we had 10 years ago. I don't remember. Was that the last charter when that was changed? Mm-hmm. Okay. So it would be, I think, smart of us maybe to look back at why we changed before we go back to going to the same thing we did before.
Okay.
And just one other, maybe it's a question, because I appreciate the comment about the Constitution. Is there anything on the proposed amendments that can be done without creating it, putting it into the charter? Obviously, like the term limits, things like that. But like the citizen comments, is that something we can change without putting it into the charter itself? Yes.
Well, that, at our last meeting, we were told that can be addressed by resolution of the commission, but then what happens is it becomes at the whim of the commission. And I know that when the commission got fed up with residents a while ago, they stopped having public comment, and then they started putting it outside the meeting after it was adjourned. And then Ken Strickland actually started videotaping it and live streaming the public comment because the city wouldn't include the public comment. So it got to be a little contentious, and I think if you want to encourage resident participation and resident activism, you need to make sure their public comments are enshrined in the meeting somewhere. And, I have my little plan I like, but I just think it needs to be by charter so that it is not at the whim of a sitting commission.
So maybe the amendment would be to have comments somewhere at the time. I just think, again, when you put something in writing that can't be changed 10 years, you might find that you might not like what you get when you ask for it. So
Correct. No, I
the
understand that part.
flexibility might be something that would be helpful.
And that would go to what Mr., who was it that suggested that we do charter reviews? Was it Vern? In less than 10 years. And it's exactly.
10 years, you can do it every year if you want.
If the commission deems it. So those types of things, Jack, I think can be resolved, and we can still put it in the charter as far as having public comments at the first meeting. And if that becomes, for some reason, I can't imagine why citizen participation in their government would be a problem. But if it should become a problem, then the commission could ask for a charter review and amend the charter. But I think what's really important is that we develop a document. If it's the Constitution of the City of Daytona Beach, we develop a document that that doesn't prohibit but enhances citizen participation directly with their representatives. And that's another reason I'm in favor of 2-year terms. I don't know why we went to 4. We were at 2 for a long time. We seemed to go to 2 about the same time we got rid of public comments at the first reading. So to me, both of those moves limited participation by the citizens with their government. And I would be in favor of 2-year terms and reading public comments at first reading because of that reason.
Mr. Driscoll, Deputy City Manager, is it possible for staff to go and review that last commission and see why they decided to do 4 years?
I don't believe that it will come out within the form of a recorded meeting as to the sentiment. I think we could all imagine with people with experience on the commission, whether it was the expense or the continuous campaigning. But to clarify, right now, citizen comments are permitted on the consent agenda, on each agenda, unless it's first reading, and then at the end, and they are recorded in the current meeting. It is part of the business meeting of the city.
Yes, but the general public comment is only allowed because the commission allows it. They could vote next meeting to say, we don't want to allow it anymore.
That is correct.
Right. I just
Also
want that
along
to
with
be
other
clear.
policies, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And of course, if it's in the charter, they would have to have the meetings, and they can't just get upset with the citizens and not, if it's part of the charter.
That is correct.
Okay, great, great. You have a comment, ma'am?
Linda Smiley, 357 Manhattan. I think it was the 2 years was gotten rid of because of the continuous campaigning, if I recall. But now I forgot what I was going to say about.
You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I know, but. Oh, I know, about the comments. Okay, so at the county, you can speak at the beginning of the meeting on anything you want, and then you can still speak at the end if it's, you ran out of time or you want to beat the dead horse or whatever. But yeah, you can speak both times.
Thank you. We'll move on to zone 2.
One question. If we went to shorter cycles on charter reviews, would they then have to be voted on by the city, by the residents every
Yes.
time? Because these are going to go on the election.
Any charter amendment, in order to be adopted, would be subject to referendum, if that's what you're asking. The commission's not required to vote to approve or reject your recommendations, regardless of how often they're made. That's up to them, but whether the commission wants one of your amendments or not, in order for an amendment to pass, it requires a referendum.
So we would have to have referendum votes every time we did that,
Yes.
which could be
And currently, we only host elections on even years within the city, according to the charter.
Okay. Ma'am?
Sandy Murphy, I'm the Zone 1 alternate. I just wanted to go back to the commentary on first reading, because I don't see it up here on the notes, and I think a number of people addressed that. And once that was taken out, even more than before, the last word went to the developer, and you had no opportunity to retort. At least when you can speak in first reading and you hear what the developer has to say, and you can develop the argument a little bit, by the time second reading comes along, you can make your counterpoints. So you know what you're arguing against. And I think if you want a good debate about what's happening at the commission and what they're proposing for the city, you want to have those voices heard and you want them to be informed so that they can speak well.
Thank you. Zone 4 comments, that was Zone 4? You have any more comments?
No, not at this time.
Zone 5.
I just wanted to say I see the work that Ms. Ruby put in and the staff putting this together, and I appreciate it because it's very, very thorough.
Go ahead.
One of the things the board had asked for was a comparative study on how many representatives, how many elected officials there are in a commission, because one of the things that I've proposed is that we go to 8 so that you don't have more than 10,000 people per zone, because I think it makes campaigning cheaper. It makes, which would be good if you're campaigning every 2 years, it costs you a little less money. It makes it easier to be responsive to your constituents as a part-time commissioner. And so they did do a study of 63 cities that have our form of government. And I looked at it, I think there's handouts back there, based on per capita. So how many residents per elected representative? Because it doesn't matter if you have 5 representatives or 7. What matters is how many people they represent. And the highest one was Palm Coast at 20,000 per elected representative. And those residents are not happy with their commission. So I think it's something that we need to consider preemptively as our city continues to grow. And at some point, we may need to consider a different form of government. But that's the government we have right now with part-time commissioners. And I just think 8 would be a nice number. So that was the only thing.
Zone 6.
Zone 6, I've been listening to comments. One thing I didn't tell you, my background is 22 years in public government besides 22 years in Air Force. And I've seen it very successful with the comments allowed at the beginning and at the end. So, and I'll have to admit, some of the county commissioners I worked with and for didn't like it, but they realized they were listening to the citizens. And I think that's so important for us to have, the citizens to have a voice in comments, especially if you got things going on in your life, you may want to say something first in the meeting, and you may not end up being there at the end. So I agree with your comments about being able to make comments at the beginning and at the end.
Right. As the mayor's representative, I really have no comments, but I have truly listened diligently to the comments of the board and of course the residents. And my question, attorney, so the recommendations that we vote on, it would be a referendum, or does the commissioners get to decide whether or not they want to vote on any of them, or they could just say, forget you guys?
The commission can decline to adopt one or more of those. If they do adopt, it still goes to referendum. If they don't adopt, there is an initiative process, where based on a certain number of petitions being signed, it has to go on a referendum, regardless of what the commission wants to do with it.
Do we know that number of petitions?
10%.
Yeah, it's in the existing, it's in the charter.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Yeah, Rick Brown again, Zone 1, alternate, Steve. One of the points that was brought up was about the election. And one of the issues with going with a 2-year term, and this I'm been kicking back and forth, because I've watched new people come in. There's a learning process before they get up to speed, get things done. But yeah, 4 years can be a little long. What I'd like to see us do is get the continuity of having an election every year and do it the way we're doing now, where we alternate zones. That way you've got some continuity within the commission so that you're not replacing, throwing out the baby in the bathwater and everything and starting from scratch, but yet you at least have half of them there can carry on. So I'm kind of in favor of I do like the way it's alternating now, just let's cut it all in half. And I don't know if that ends up into a greater expense with our county. I mean, it would, but, that's just one of the things I feel the continuity within the commission is important. Term limits, I have mixed feelings on that. Yes, there should be a time limit. Again, the same problem. When you start breaking up into smaller zones, it's sad in a city of over 82,000 people that we only got the same handful of citizens showing up at the meeting. Now, I don't know what the attendance is online, but I know myself that when I used to watch and then when they cut the citizens' comments off, they were passing things through with a bang of a gavel that they weren't even discussing. And they did some major things with public lands and whatnot. And that's what got me seriously involved. And, I kind of protested the fact that we were locked out of meetings. But citizens' feedback, again, they all work for us. And they need to remember that. And, we need to get more involved in it. So, again, there's several sides to these issues that we need to think about. And I know every one of you, that we've had past discussions on, are going to think about those things. But I do like the concept of continuity. So I think we need to think about that because it's important to have some experience in there and, like I say, not throw everybody out. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
One thing that concerns me about shortening the length of time a commissioner can serve is the initiatives that they take a lot of time to come to fruition. And if they're working on a project or doing something for their area, working with the state or working with Florida Power and Light or somebody, to have them have to stop that work and then campaign for re-election and then try to pick it up again. I'm concerned that commissioners that are active, that are producing, that are working every day, it's a part-time job, but for some commissioners, it's a full-time job. And I'm concerned that they would be working hard for something and then it would have to stop to get reelected. That's a long process. So if things could get done in 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months, probably wouldn't be an issue. But they take years to get done. And so that's a concern I have. I think we need to get them the opportunity to do their job.
Thank you. We're coming to the conclusion of our meeting. Yes, ma'am, go right ahead. Go right ahead. Go to the mic.
Just want a clarification, don't understand this recommendation that the term limits should be by person and not just position. I didn't understand.
Right, meaning that if you're, and this was something Mr. Lloyd and I talked about at the last meeting, that if, say you're elected to Zone 2, okay, and you serve your term there, and you move to Zone 3, and you run again there, so basically by moving, you're getting around the term limit requirement, and you end up with 4 years, or you go back and forth between 2 and 3, 2 and 3. You end up kind of getting around the intent of the limit.
Yes, ma'am.
Katina Brown, Zone 5 alternate. Mr. Lloyd, to your point, there are some commissioners who are not as active and who have held a lot of time, and the citizens are not necessarily as happy with those particular commissioners. I think we all know and appreciate that it does take time once they get started getting initiatives rolling, but it's also a point in time where when things are not being done and we just have to sit and wait 2, 3, 4 years, and then they campaign and they get in again and then they sit for another 4 years. So, I mean, I can see both sides of the token, but I really think it's something that we really need to dig into, because we are having some commissioners who are very, very active, and then we have some who are not so.
I appreciate your comment, and I agree. And I think that the electorate has the opportunity not to send those people back up to the dais. And if they do, then it's what they want. So 4 years is a long time, but it serves the federal government well in certain areas, and serves state government well. But I just think 2 years is, if it didn't take so long to get things done, I wouldn't have such a problem with it.
But
Yeah, the federal government has two-year terms for the House, and so does the state. I think that the whole point of the charter and the whole point of our government is to best represent the people, the voters. And if you get stuck with a bad commissioner that doesn't listen to his or her constituents, you're stuck with that person for 4 years. That's a long time. And, you know, I've been watching the city commission, and I don't know anything, any kind of project that they could get involved in. And if it's a good project that they're involved in, and it's going well, it's going to help them in their campaign to get reelected so they can finish whatever job that they were starting in the first 2 years. I really, and then I hear the thing of, well, they're going to have to be campaigning all the time, as if campaigning is something they shouldn't be doing. Well, campaigning implies direct contact with your constituents. To me, that's a positive. That's not a negative. You know, so the closer the representatives are to the people, the better government we have. And you talk about the Constitution and the principles of the Founding Fathers, that's what their principles were. You know, the closer the representative is to the people, the better form of government we have. And the further we limit that relationship by going to a 4-year term, I think it's detrimental.
One counter on that. If the commissioner is doing such a horrid job, I believe there's a recall provision that you could petition. Is there?
It is.
Yes, under Florida statute.
So you could recall that commission and get them out of office. So you're not stuck with them for 4 years if it's so bad.
Sure, I recognize Ann.
I went to a presentation by the Supervisor of Elections on recall, and you have to, it's quite an onerous process. You can't just say, I don't like what they're doing. You also need to, 2 times to get signatures. I think it's 10% to get it done. So saying recall is something easy, I don't think it is. I think always be campaigning. You know, if they're always campaigning, like Paul said it very well. If you're always campaigning, you're always in the community, you're always going to be working hard for those agenda items, those initiatives that are going to move your zone forward. And when your community sees that you're doing that, they will reelect you. So I guess we're just debating each other at this point.
Well, I would like to comment.
We recognize you, Sandy.
I wanted to say first that, you know, state and federal are a whole other ballgame. There's an enormous amount of staffing support that each individual has. They can do a lot more. But also, when you have a person who is coming up with good ideas and doing activities, they're not the one who actually puts that into play. When the commission votes on doing what it is they're proposing, they're promoting, that becomes a staff function once it's approved. So it doesn't mean that everything that has been a good idea coming from that person comes to a halt. It just means that that person is no longer representing their community. But anything that is beneficial, it's already been put into play, and somebody would have to actually stop it to pull staff away from implementing those ideas.
Right. One of the things that I did not do at the beginning of the meeting is get a chance to allow our alternatives to say who they are. So those individuals that are alternatives, could you please go back to the mic and tell the folks who you are? And
Since Steve brought it up, I'm the alternate for Steve. And one of the things, too, if you're not familiar with it, we have to do the debate here because of sunshine law rules, that we can't debate any other forum other than when we're all together. So we all try to comply with that. You know, and now alternates can talk to their primaries. So Steve and I meet on occasion, and we discuss things prior to the meetings so that we have kind of a joint presentation there. So, you know, the alternates is a pretty important thing. I'm proud to have been selected by the mayor to be the at-large representative with Steve, who I'm also happy to see selected. There's a number of people on here that I'm glad to see on board. We have different opinions, different walks of life, and I'm glad to be part of it. And as most of you know that I've talked to, I'm always available. You can get a hold of me anytime. I'd be glad to discuss any of your ideas. Thank you.
Sandy Murphy, I am Ann Ruby's alternative on Zone 1, and I think you'll see a lot of the people who are alternates at the commission meetings and at the planning board meetings and all the other things, because we tend to be those same people who are involved. And if folks are watching this, I would encourage people to come out and get involved. It doesn't take a lot. But if you can show up and listen a little, you can learn a lot about your community and you can have your opinions heard. And once you know more, you will start to have opinions about it.
The city will be so happy.
I am Katina Brown, Zone 5 alternate. I'm a former City Commission candidate for Zone 5 as well. I am born and raised in Daytona Beach. I've been here my entire life. I lived somewhere else. I came back. This is home. The whole premise of my campaign was that I'm just a concerned mom and a concerned citizen. So I took some time away because we had some family things that needed to be taken care of, but I'm back in order to show that we are still concerned. And there are things that take place that, and I brought it to, the attention when I was running, that the city has no idea. The constituents have no idea what's really going on. And yes, they can come out to meetings, and yes, they can reach out to their commissioner, and yes, they can write emails, and yes, they can do all of the things. But if there is no real response or no real relationship from City Hall to the streets, and that was one of the things of bridging that gap from City Hall to the people who actually live, the constituents, the residents, then we have a problem. So I'm happy to be serving on the board. I'm happy to be working with everybody and seeing what we can do, how we can affect change.
Great, thank you. As you know, this is truly a formal meeting, but it's relatively informal because we truly want to hear from our citizens, and because you guys are the most important part of our city is the citizens, not the commissioners, not the city managers, but you as the citizens. Are there any other comments from our citizenry? If not, we heard from the staff, not the staff, but the commissioners. Staff, any comments, closing comments?
Just that our next town hall meeting is April 8th at 6 p.m. at Valor, the Daytona Beach Police Department headquarters.
Great. If there's no other comment, this meeting is adjourned.